Hello, and welcome to Credit Building 101, Building Credit as an Asset. My name is Tiffany, and I am the Continuous Improvement Manager at United Ministries. This training was put together by the Credit Builders Alliance, which is a national nonprofit network dedicated to helping low and moderate income households build strong credit and other financial assets. And today we're going to talk about building credit goals, understanding how credit building works, and developing all the tools and skills we need to build strong credit so that we can reach our goals. Okay, so what word comes to mind when you think about credit? A lot of our perceptions of credit can be both positive and negative, depending on what we've heard, how we grew up. So what has been your experience with credit thus far? Everyone's credit journey is different. We've all had a different combination of experiences, education, and access to credit products that have brought us to where we are today. Sometimes credit can be a hard topic to discuss, and we want to acknowledge that. In this course, we'll talk a lot about credit reports and credit scores. While scores are certainly important, we are all more than our credit score. Regardless of where you're starting from, with the tools and information we'll go through today, we hope you'll leave with a better understanding of credit and more equipped to build your credit and accomplish your goals. So why credit building? Why do we care? Why would we want to even worry about building our credit? Good credit equals access to high quality financial products. Most of us need credit to manage unexpected expenses or changes in our income. Without access to credit, we risk high debt and predatory practices. Having good credit helps us find more affordable financial products. A good credit score can help a person save as much as $200,000 in the course of their lifetime. These savings come from reduced interest rates and fees, as well as reduced or eliminated costly deposits otherwise required to turn on utilities or acquire a cell phone contract. A positive credit rating reduces the cost of products such as a car and homeowners insurance. Good credit lets us have a choice as to where we live. Our landlords pull our credit. Good credit is a precursor to asset building. A good credit history can make the difference in accessing the affordable lending products necessary to go to college, buy a home, or start and grow a small business. Finally, good credit can even impact our options for employment. Good credit helps to manage emergencies. Households at all income levels rely on credit to manage cash flow and address unexpected expenses. Credit building can expand the options that are available to you. Credit building helps us reduce our expenses, as we just said, through fees, through interest rates. And good credit can help us achieve our financial goals. It offers access to assets, equals greater and more affordable access to the things that you need and want for yourself and your family. Right, so let's talk about some credit basics. When was the last time that you saw your full credit report or even your credit score? Some of us never see our full credit report unless we pull it ourselves. Even when we've applied for things in the past, the lender may not have shown us the full report. So here are the tools. Here's what is involved in your credit report. First is your credit history or file. That is the entirety of your life, how you've used credit your entire life. Not a lot of folks have access to that entire file because your credit report, so what the reporting bureaus that we'll talk about in a little bit are giving to lenders, is your credit report. The file folder, the credit report, is a summary of your credit history at a moment in time. So you've probably heard that some things fall off of your credit report after so many years. That means they're no longer showing on that file folder. They are still in that massive file cabinet, but they're not in that particular folder that the reporting bureau has released to a lender or that you see on annual credit report. And then your credit score is a 3-digit number that is come up with by separate companies from the credit bureaus. So the credit bureaus are one set of companies that keep your file together and give it to lenders. And then there's another set of companies that takes that information and uses an equation, an algorithm, to create a 3-digit number that summarizes your credit risk for a lender at any moment in time. That's why your score changes all the time. That's why when you look on Credit Karma and then go to the bank that same day, they'll have a different number because they're using a different equation based on what the bank is looking for. And it's probably a different credit scoring model or credit score company that has come up with that 3-digit number. So the credit score is a summary of one of your credit reports that is there to assess risk for the banks. So all of this is in service for the lenders to help them know whether you are risky or not risky for them to give access to a credit product. All right, so let's talk for a minute about what we mean when we say credit products. There are 2 types of credit products. The first type is an installment credit, most often referred to as a loan. So in installment credit, you have a fixed loan amount and terms, and the same amount is paid each month. So think about a car payment or a student loan. At the beginning, the bank gives that lump sum to you or to the person who holds the title of the car, right? They might give that loan amount to the car dealership. And then you're paying that back every single month at the same rate, the same amount every month. And then when you're done with it, you finish paying it back and the loan is closed. So it has a fixed amount for a fixed period of time and fixed terms. Sometimes you can negotiate those terms in the middle, but it's fixed from the beginning. The second type is revolving credit. Think of a credit card or a line of credit. It's open-ended and the monthly payment is based on the balance you charge to it. In other words, the borrower may change different amounts every month. Most credit cards have a set minimum balance that you have to pay each month if there's anything on it, or a percentage of what you owe, but it's open-ended, and then if you don't pay it off, you have a minimum payment that you have to make every month. And that goes on for the eternity that the credit line is open to you. So you can keep charging it, and the amount that's on it, the balance, will be different based on how much you charge to that card. Credit feels really complicated, and it feels like often that there are a lot of rules, that there are these secrets that, oh, if you do this thing, did you know that your credit score might go down? But there are 3 basics, fundamentals to credit building that will help you build good credit. We're going to learn this system together, and we're going to learn how to work it so that it works in your favor, so that you can make more money and have better access to financial products. So number 1, in order to see an increase in your credit score, you must have at least 1 credit product open and in use. This can be a credit card or a loan of any type, including student loans. That line of credit must be active, meaning that it is being used. This can be as simple as having a credit card with a small recurring purchase on it each month that you pay off each month. It generally takes 3 to 6 months to establish a credit score. If you are starting without a score, you will likely be scored in the mid-600s after 6 months of good credit building. Note that using credit absolutely does not mean that you will go into debt. If you do not have a credit product that is open and actively being used, you simply cannot build credit, which is a choice that you choose to make. But it can cost you money in terms of interest rates, fees, etc., by not having a credit score. Okay, so number 1, open and use at least 1 credit product at any given time. Number 2, if you do use a credit card, if that is one of your credit products that you choose to use, keep your balances low, meaning the amount that you charge to that card. You do not want to max out the card, meaning using the total amount available to you. It is best to stay below 30% of the limit on each of your cards. So if you have a $1,000 limit on your credit card, try not to put more than $300 on that card. So keeping that balance at all times under $300 whenever possible. And then number 3, this is the main key to having good credit. Make sure you pay your bill on time each month for those credit products, or at least within 30 days of the due date. Credit is reported as late if it is not paid within 30 days of the due date. So you make sure you're paying on time to avoid fees and to protect that credit score. That's how good credit happens. All right, so let's get some context about who all is involved in this credit industry. Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are the three major credit bureaus that customize reports for consumers and various business purposes. There are many other specialties that bureaus are used for lending, many other specialty businesses that the bureaus use for lending purposes, like insurance, auto lending, apartment rentals, employment credit checks, etc. The big three that you will have probably heard of are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And they compile all of your credit information and put it into reports for when businesses ask to see what is on your credit. Then there are the people that use those credit reports, lenders and businesses. Think about auto lenders, credit card issuers, banks, landlord, employers, and any of the people that may have access to your report if they decide to lend to you. Then there are the companies that build credit scores. There are many of those companies. The most widely known are FICO, which you may have heard of, and VantageScore. The credit reporting agencies and credit scoring companies do not make any decisions about whether to lend to you and at what rate. So it's the businesses that are choosing to lend to you or give you access to that credit card that are taking that information and making decisions based on that information about what they think you should pay in interest. Then there are the government agencies such as the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission that enforce the laws around credit reporting. And finally, there's you. Your use of credit, which loans you take out, how you pay your bills, etc., is also a part of the credit system, and it informs long-term the decisions that businesses make about what interest rates to charge. Okay, let's play a quick game of Credit Jeopardy. All right, myth or fact? If you pay all your monthly bills on time, you will have a high credit score. Is that myth or fact? That is a myth, because so many of our bills are not reported to those credit bureaus, and therefore it is not considered in your credit score. So like your rent, most of the time, most folks' rent is not reported to the credit bureaus. So you can pay that bill on time and not have any other credit products, or have any credit products, and therefore you do not have a score, right? Same with our cell phone, any other bills that we pay. So the only way we can have a high credit score if we pay our bills on time is if we're talking about our bills for credit products, like our car loan, okay? If you only have collection accounts on your credit report, you may not have a score. If you only have collection accounts, you may not have a score. Myth or fact? That is a fact, because collection accounts are not credit products. So if you've not had any credit products on your, any open trade lines on your report, and you just have, say, medical collections, you will probably be unscored because they can't make any assumptions about how risky you are. They don't know how risky you are because you've not had any credit products. You've just had bills that have been not paid in the form of collections. So you may not have a score. Okay? You can ruin your credit by applying for a few new lines of credit, also known as making inquiries. You can ruin your credit. Myth or fact? That is a myth. When you apply for credit products, your score will go down a little bit, not a lot. That's not a major part of what our credit score, where our credit score comes from. So you want to, as we'll talk about later, you want to keep the number of products you apply for at a minimum. Don't apply for every single store credit card that is offered to you. That can make your credit score significantly lower. But if you go shop for a car and the car dealer inquires with 3 different lenders to get you some rates to compare, that is not going to ruin your credit at all. Okay? It is possible to go from not having a score to having a good score in 6 months if you have one loan that you pay on time each month. Myth or fact? That is a fact. If you are new to credit or currently credit invisible, meaning you don't have anything on your report, and you open a credit builder loan and you pay it on time every month, you will have a solid score in 6 months. There's hope. Okay, and then a single late payment on anything can reduce a credit score by as much as 100 points, a single late payment. And remember, that's more than 30 days after the due date. Is that a myth or a fact? That is, you can't see it because of my head, but that's a fact. So especially if you have a good credit score, if you're more than 30 days late, they're assessing risk. And so they're saying, uh-oh, something's wrong. Something's wrong because this person's always on time. And so your score will go down by 100 points or more. Okay, so let's talk about our credit reports. When you look at your credit report, you will notice that there are different sections on your report. These sections are standard across all reports, but will contain information specifically about you and your use of credit. First, we have personal identifying information. This is your name, your birth date, your social security number, current and previous addresses, and often employers, based on when you applied for things and you had to say where you worked. That will be on your credit report. Some information only gets updated when someone applies for credit, so it's not unusual for this information to be out of date. It's important to review this section of information for any unfamiliar information, because if there's an address on there that you never lived at, that is a sign potentially of identity theft or an error in data entry. So you might have had something, debt assigned to you that was not yours. So it's important to make sure that your personal identifying information is correct, because that can help you say, oh, something is wrong with this and I might need to dispute something on my report. Whenever you apply for credit, you will be asked for this information. So make sure when you're applying for credit to always use your full legal name so that the correct names show up on your report. Also note that an individual taxpayer identification number should not be used in place of a social security number when applying for credit. Okay, the second section is your credit history. This includes all the lenders that you have done business with and will contain information about the types of credit accounts, payments, outstanding balances, credit limits, the dates that these accounts were opened and closed, and current status, such as on time or late payments. The third section is public records, and that will include any bankruptcy filings you have. There used to be more things in that public records section, such as civil judgments and tax liens. Those should no longer be on the reports because of laws enacted around what can be included on your credit report, which is fantastic. And then the last section is inquiries. So this section shows which lenders, employers, and other people who have requested your report in the last 2 years. It will also show if your report has been accessed for educational purposes or for pre-approvals. There are often misconceptions about what is and isn't on a credit report. A lot of people think that their checking and savings account information is on their credit report. It is not. So actually banking with a brick and mortar bank can increase your credit score because you are seen as more stable and trustworthy if you have a bank account, but the information about your bank accounts does not show on your reports. So the balance that's in your checking account and who your checking account is with does not show up on your credit report. Then any beliefs and affiliations. So your gender, ethnicity, your religion, or your political affiliations, that's not on there. Many non-delinquent accounts. So billing accounts that you have that are in good standing, like your Duke Energy bill, that's not going to show up because they're not reporting to the credit bureaus. Duke only shows up on your credit report if you have a bill that you never paid. So that would be a collection, right? But a non-delinquent account, something that is open and in good standing, it's not going to show up on your credit report because it's not a credit product. And then old accounts that may no longer report per the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And that's what folks are talking about when they say, oh, that bill will no longer be on your credit report after 7 years. And that's true. So collections don't show up on your credit report after 7 years. Now, there are other delinquent things that can show up for a lot longer, like your student loans. If you don't pay your student loans, that'll be on your credit report forever. So yeah, old accounts that may no longer report won't be on there. All right, let's remember what our rights are in regards to our credit. You have the right to receive one free copy of your credit report from each consumer reporting agency. And remember, they often have different information on them, so you should check all three. Each year, and maybe more frequently in special circumstances. Sometimes businesses will offer you access to your credit report because something happened on their end, or if you dispute something successfully, you have the right to see it more often. So you can receive one free copy each year from Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion at annualcreditreport.com. Not free credit report, annualcreditreport.com. And that is a right that you have by the law. You have the right to be informed if you are denied for a loan or receive unfavorable terms because of negative information on your credit report. They don't necessarily have to tell you like what exactly it was, but they do have to tell you they denied you because of information on your credit report. You have the right to dispute information believed to be incorrect with credit bureaus and or with the original furnisher. So you can submit either in writing or through an online system disputes about any information that you believe is incorrect. And you have the right to receive a new free copy of your credit report if you dispute something successfully. So if you say this was not mine and you provide proof and they say, yep, it was not yours, then you can see your credit report again to ensure that it is no longer on there, that it actually came off. So I asked you earlier, when was the last time you saw your credit report or your score? And some of you may have thought about the fact that your bank or your credit card lets you see your credit score every month. There are financial management and budgeting sites like Intuit that let you see your credit score. Then there are credit websites, and some of you may have thought about, oh yeah, I have Credit Karma. What do you think some of the pros and cons are about using these platforms? Can you think of any that you've experienced? So they can be really good because they give you summarized information about what's on your credit report. It's important to keep in mind, though, that they're often using different scoring models than your bank is using or whoever you're applying for credit with is using. So you get on Credit Karma and you see that you have a 620, and then you go apply for a car loan, and the bank says, we can't give you a car loan because your credit score is a 550. And that happens pretty frequently. So it's important to keep in mind that you are looking for trends on these, which we'll talk about in just another second, and not the specific score, because they may not be using the same model. The other thing is that Credit Karma markets a lot of credit products that are not healthy and safe credit products for you to use. So do not apply for credit products offered to you by these websites. Instead, go to a major credit card company or a bank to apply for products. Credit Karma can be really, really good because it gives you an idea of the trends that you're seeing. So while we can't rely on the exact credit score to know what a bank is going to give us as a credit score, we can watch for those upward trends. So if you see your score going up on Credit Karma, that's a very good indicator that your score is going up in every other model. If it tanks all of a sudden, you know that something hit your credit report that was negative, or there was a fraud activity that happened that made your credit score tank, and you can check your report and then dispute that activity. So these can be really great websites to keep track of what's happening on our credit report if we don't have other means to keep track of what's happening on our credit report. So I would recommend you use them. Just don't apply for their credit products, and know that they may ask for personal information from you to use for marketing purposes. I think Credit Karma also purchased Mint, which was a budgeting app. So there's like the option to do some budgeting work on Credit Karma as well. So just keep that in mind, that they can be really helpful, but just be wary. All right, let's talk a little bit about credit scores. So generally, higher credit scores indicate to lenders and businesses who they think is going to be a better customer. People with the highest credit scores tend to get the best rates on terms on loans and other products. Those with lower scores may have to pay more for loans and services, may need a cosigner, or they may get denied altogether. So regardless of where you're starting from, it's important to focus on moving upward. So those with poor credit are viewed as higher risk. That tends to be from 300 to about 575 or so. You're considered to have poor credit, and things that you can get will have higher interest rates. Those with fair credit, it's about 575 to about 650. You may be eligible for more reasonable rates. You may become eligible for things like car loans and mortgages once you get to the higher end of fair credit, or you may be required to have a cosigner or pay a larger deposit. Then once you get to 700, you're considered to have good credit, and then past 800, it's excellent credit, and you're going to have the highest, the best rates, which are the lowest rates, and you're viewed by lenders as dependable and low risk. You might have no score, no credit score at all. If you have never used credit cards or loans before, if you've only recently started using credit, it takes a few months for credit building to kick in. So if you just started 2 months ago, you're still going to have no score. Or you've used credit in the past, but don't have any accounts with recent activity. So for some reason, you didn't have credit access for a while. Let's say you were in a recovery program for 2 years and you didn't use any credit cards. You are considered credit retired at that point. And so while you have things on your report, none of them were active, and so you fell off the radar basically. And so they don't score you anymore because they don't know anything about your recent activity, which is how they're measuring scores. It is much better to have no credit score than to have a bad credit score, because you can move forward much quicker. So no score. The good news, there's nowhere to go but up. The bad news, lenders may treat you as high risk because they don't have information about you, so they're just going to assume the worst because they're in it to make money, right? So you've heard the bad credit, no problem. That's what they're referring to. No credit is still considered risky. So there's nowhere to go but up, though. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about why you have a million credit scores at once. These scores, who are they created for? They're created for lenders to assess how risky they think you are, right? So there are different types of businesses. There are businesses giving out car loans. There are businesses who have credit cards. There are businesses who are giving home mortgages, right? So these different types of businesses are assessing different types of risk. Based on what you're applying for, they're trying to figure out how risky you are. So because we've got the different businesses assessing for different risks, there are different equations the credit scoring bureaus use to glean that information. And that is their proprietary knowledge. That's how they make money, is they have these algorithms that figure out what your credit score is for these businesses. So not only are there different types of businesses, there's the different scoring models, the different companies. So they each have different equations. And then they make those equations based on the different credit reports that are pulled by the different credit bureaus. So there are lots of potential combinations that lead to lots of different scores at any given time. Despite all of that, the same 5 key scoring factors exist across all credit scoring models. Okay, so these are the important things, regardless of who's assessing your risk. first is payment history, and this is the single greatest factor impacting your credit score. It is 35% of your credit score per FICO. So someone with a strong credit profile in the payment history section makes all their payments on time. Remember, that's what we said. That's like the key to good credit, is making all your payments on time. If you miss a payment, get back on track quickly. And then payment history also includes regularly using your credit accounts. So if you have a credit card and you never use it, it gets closed. And after just 6 months of you not using it, it may not be closed, but it's considered an inactive card. And so it cannot build your credit at all unless you're putting at least something little on it every single month. Okay, so that's what's included in payment history. The second strongest factor, which is about 30% of your score, is outstanding debt. And so this is involving the usage of your revolving credit, so credit cards. So in order to have a strong credit profile in the outstanding debt category, keep your credit card balances low. Remember, we said that under 30%. Under 10% is even better. So if you had a $1,000 credit limit and you kept it under $100, you put $50 worth of gas on it and paid that off every single month, that's even better. So keep your balances low. Let me talk a minute about why that's the case, because some people feel strongly about, like, why does that keep your give you good credit? So remember, the banks are trying to say how risky you are. So if you have a bunch of credit available to you, like a high credit limit on several credit cards, if you have all this credit available to you, but you only use a little of it every month, that means to them, right, think about, they're trying to make money, that, oh, Tiffany has lots of credit available to her that she could use if she wanted to, but she doesn't need to. She makes enough money that she doesn't need to use her credit cards. She doesn't max them out. She only puts a little bit on it. So that's why the scores have this as one of the major factors, because you're considered secure, financially stable. If you have access to a lot of credit, lots of banks trust you to give them, and by giving you credit cards, but you don't have to use it all. So that's that. And then avoid maxing out any one credit card at a time. So keep all the balances low. And then even if your overall credit limit, credit utilization rate is low, but you max out one of your credit cards, that's also bad. So don't max out any single credit card either. So let's talk about that. So this is an example of keeping balances low. Miss Ruby has 3 cards. Her first card has a limit of $1,000 and she has $500 on it. What percentage is that? 50. So she went over here. She has 50% on this card. On this card, her second card, she has a limit of $2,500 and her balance is $1,300. So that's a little over 50%, right? But then she has a third card with a limit of $2,500 that she doesn't have anything on. So the utilization rate is actually across all 3 credit cards combined. So she has a balance of $1,800 total, this $500 plus $1,300, and her limits all added together is $6,000. So $1,800 divided by 6,000. Ruby is only using 30% of her credit limits. So great. She is seen as strong in outstanding debt, keeping her balances low. So she's going to have a good credit score based on that. So if Miss Ruby decides to close this credit card, or she's not used it in a year, and so the credit card company closes it on her, her utilization rate changes because she no longer has this additional $2,500 credit limit that she can use. So what does it change it to? If we take out that extra $2,500 and we only have $3,500 with an $1,800 balance, my head is covering it again, but that gets us to over 50%. So her outstanding debt is much higher, and therefore her credit score is not going to be as high. Next, we have length of credit history, which per FICO is 15% of their credit scoring model. So someone with a strong credit profile and length of credit history avoids closing old accounts. So especially those credit cards that you've had open for a really long time, even if you don't want to use them anymore, if you can put a little bit of money on them every 6 months, that'll increase your credit history. You've had that card for a really long time, don't close it if at all possible. And then just remember that credit building takes time. It's irritating, but we have to be patient with it. So if you're doing a good job of, you're working on your credit and you're gonna open an account so that you can build your credit history, you have to wait a few months, but it will go up. They have to see that you are paying on time for multiple months before they're like, oh, this person can pay all their bills on time. They are low risk. And then next we have inquiries, and that's new credit. And like I said, if you apply for a store credit card every time I offer it to you every month for a year, that will be really bad. This is 10% of your credit score. But if you're only applying for new credit when you need it, even if your score goes down a little bit, it's going to go right back up because you're applying for credit and you get it, and therefore you're building credit products, credit history, right? You're building a thicker file. But if you apply all the time, your score goes down because they're saying you're risky in that you apply for things and you keep getting denied for things. Or you've applied for a bunch of things and you must need a lot of credit cards because something's not going well financially. So you only apply for credit when you need it. And lastly, 10% of your score is credit mix. Someone with a strong credit profile has a lot of different types of credit, has in different installment accounts, different revolving accounts with major institutions, major banks, major credit card companies. Building a robust credit profile shows that you can manage different types of credit accounts well, that your finances are in order, and that you don't use all the credit that you have access to. So you want to have a lot of different types. Don't worry about that in the beginning. It's only 10% of your overall credit score. But as you get higher up and you want to keep increasing your credit score, it can be helpful if you are ready and financially responsible, financially able to pay for those things. It can be smart to have open other accounts that you have access to. So remember, what are our best practices for building strong credit scores? How do we get that really high credit score? We keep it active. We establish and maintain a mix of active, installment, and revolving credit accounts, and we always pay those on time. We keep our balances low. Lower debt balances on our revolving lines of credit, our credit cards. And we keep it up. You want at least 6 months of credit history and activity on your credit report at any time. And that's how you have a high credit score. All right, so let's talk now a little more concretely about how we can build strong credit. So as we know, how do we build good credit? By making on-time payments that are reported to a credit bureau every month. That builds good credit. So let's play Jeopardy again. Will this help me build credit? An open credit card that has been unused in the last year. No, because if it's not active, it's not building credit. So if you've not used it in the last year, it's not actually considered open and it's not building credit. How about a car loan in good standing with a $2,000 balance? Car loan in good standing with a $2,000 balance. Yes, that will help me build credit as long as I'm making on-time payments. So in good standing, that builds credit. How about a car loan that I paid off last month? Oh, that will not build credit. I paid that off. So it's a positive on my credit report, but it is not building my credit. How about a collection account that you are making payments on? A collection account. You're not going to be able to see it again because of my head, but the answer is no. A collection account is not a credit account. So if you are making payments on it, it's not actually doing anything positive to your credit. Okay. All right, so let's talk about some strategies for building credit. Strategy number 1, a secured credit card. Have you heard of this? So a secured credit card is a bank credit card that is backed by money, sometimes dollar for dollar to the limit, that you deposit and is kept in a bank account. So One that we recommend in this area is Self-Help Credit Union. That's one of our partner agencies. They have a $200 secured credit card. So you pay the credit union $200 and they hold that money as collateral for your credit card. And your credit limit on that credit card is $200. It's security so that if you don't pay your bill, that deposit is used to cover that debt. Typically, these cards report to all three bureaus and are often considered starter products by individuals who are not eligible for unsecured cards. So the one issue with a secured credit card is that you need money up front to be able to purchase it. Excuse me, the money that's used as your collateral. All right. Then we've got an unsecured card. So it's the opposite of a secured card. This is a type of revolving account that does not require collateral and can be used to make purchases. So the lender charges interest on the amount borrowed unless the cardholder pays that balance in full at the end of each month. So if you use an unsecured credit card and you pay it on time every month, unless that card carries like a yearly fee, which some of them do, you are not paying any money for that credit card other than the bills that you put on it, like what you use to pay with it. So a lot of times you'll have to wait until you have at least a fair credit score, a good credit score, to qualify for an unsecured credit card. A lot of times after you've had a secured credit card for a while and your score has gone up, you can convert that to an unsecured card and they'll give you your deposit back. Unsecured credit cards are better for your credit than secured cards, and they report to all three credit bureaus. Okay. Credit builder loans. So this is typically United Ministries' primary strategy for helping folks build credit. And there are several organizations in town that offer those, including, like I said, Self-Help Credit Union, Greenville Heritage Federal, Sparrow. There's an online credit building and bank website called self.com that offers a credit builder loan. And so what this is kind of like a reverse loan almost, where they give you a credit builder loan, but instead of handing you cash up front and then it's paid in and you pay it back in installments, they actually put that cash in a savings account and they lock that savings account. And then you pay towards it every month so that that savings account is then unlocked to you at the end of the loan term. So it also works as a savings, which is fantastic for folks who are trying to save for certain things. So an example of this is one that Self-Help Credit Union offers. We recommend doing a $500 loan over a 12-month term to build credit for a good length of time. Because if you only did 6 months, there's not as much record of on-time payments, right? So we want it to be 12 months, so that's longer, and we say $500. And the payments on that are $43 a month. So you pay to the credit union $43 every month for a year. And at the end of that year, you have $500 that's in a savings account ready for you to use or keep in emergency savings. And you've only paid a total of $516 for that year. And it is a very solid credit building strategy. Your credit score will have gone up potentially significantly if you've started it unscored. And you've only paid $16 for that product. And it's going to save you a lot of money because you now have a good credit score. So credit builder loan is the one that we would recommend starting with, and it doesn't require as much money up front as a secured credit card. But both are fantastic options for starting out. Then there is rent reporting for credit building. So there are some landlords that will report rent to the credit bureaus. So if you pay your rent every month, then it is helping you build your credit score. So looking for a landlord that will rent report can help you build credit. It can be hard to find those though. Then there are social loans or lending circles, otherwise known as SUSUs, you may have heard of, where everyone puts into a pot monthly, and then the group determines who is going to get the loan for an asset they're looking for or an emergency expense. And as you're paying back, those lending circles will report to the credit bureaus that you're making on-time payments. So that can help build your credit. Then we have authorized user. If there is someone you are close to, a family member who has really good credit, and they have a credit card with a fairly high credit limit they've been using for a long time, they can add you as an authorized user to that credit card, and that will also build your credit because you get their credit history as a part of that. Then there are personal loans. So you can go to the bank to get a personal loan. There are loan companies in the area. Some of them have predatory lending practices where they try to rope you into higher and higher loan amounts, or they charge you exorbitant interest. And then often they don't report to the credit bureaus, but there are some personal loan companies that do report to the credit bureaus, and their interest isn't quite as high. You're going to most be able to find those with a bank, though, with a reputable institution, but those can build your credit. And then lastly, we have student loans. Student loans are solid on your credit as long as you are paying them on time. Can I build credit without going into debt? Yes, you can build credit without going into debt. Many of the products we mentioned are examples of ways to do so. So let's look at an example. How? Meet Sophia. Sophia had a credit score of 550. She opened a secured credit card to start out with a major credit card company and connected it to auto-pay her music streaming. She then set her bank account to auto-pay her credit card bill in full every month. So she was able to be responsible so that she doesn't forget to make the payment. She set it to auto-pay. She knew the amount it was going to be, so there were no surprises in using auto-pay. And after 6 months, her score was increased to a 660. So after 6 months, she had a 110 increase in her credit score, and thus she was eligible to roll that secured card into an unsecured credit card, get her deposit back, and have access to a lot more credit products because now she's in the mid 600s. So that is one way to absolutely not go into debt. She didn't pay any interest on that, and she got her deposit back from the secured credit card because she paid on time. All right, so here are some tips for successfully managing our credit accounts. If you have an installment account, make sure that any extra payments that you make towards that are allocated correctly to principal and interest. Remember that if you prepay, if you pay those off early, so if you pay your auto loan back early, that could reduce your overall cost because you're paying less interest in the long run. But if you pay it early, closed loans will no longer build your credit. A lot of folks get frustrated because they might see their credit dip a little bit after they finish paying off an installment loan. But remember, the net positive is much higher than that little dip at the end. A closed account will no longer build credit. If your goal is to save the money and interest, by all means, pay that off early. Just remember that it won't build your credit anymore after that. Revolving credit. If possible, pay the balance in full each month. That way you're not paying any money in interest. You're not paying any money on that credit card. You are only paying the bill that you already put on there, right? You want to keep your balances low. Avoid the minimum payment trap. What does that mean? Some folks, when they get a credit card, they see that their minimum payment is $50, and they think, oh, all I have to pay is $50 a month. Great. When you do that, your balance goes up and up and up the more money you put on that credit card. And your interest, they start charging you interest after 30 days. So they're making money on every dollar that you keep putting on that credit card. So that bill's going to keep getting higher when you only pay the minimum payment. Only pay the minimum payment in an emergency. When there's some reason why you cannot pay the balance of your credit card, but know that you will be able to in the future. So avoid that minimum payment trap. Don't pay the minimum, pay the full balance on your credit card every month. And then if possible, keep the credit cards open. Do not close those credit cards. If you want to be sure you're not, like if it's a problem for you where you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to keep spending on it. Put that one bill a month, like your streaming service, on that credit card. Have it auto pay, and then put the card away so you can't use it, and you're still building credit that way. Before you get new credit, think about, why do I need credit? Am I ready? Okay, so what is our purpose? Why do you need credit? If right now the priority is not to build credit, if the priority is instead to save, save. Then if you know you're going to need to get in a new apartment in 6 months, and you know you're going to need a higher credit score to get in that apartment, it's time to go ahead and get started on building credit. Or you know you're going to have to purchase a car with a loan, it's time to go ahead and get started on building credit. Do you understand the terms? Make sure you understand the terms in full. If the legalese jargon feels overwhelming, bring it to someone who has experience in credit and make sure you understand what you're getting into, because there are a lot of predatory practices out there that are looking to make money off of you. So be sure you understand what you're getting into. Affordability. Can you afford this? Is that car loan more than you're going to be able to pay 3 months from now? How will it impact your financial stability to have this? If the credit builder loan is beyond your budget, don't get the credit builder loan. It's literally not worth it because you're going to go into debt in other ways if you do that, which will not build your credit, obviously. Responsibility. Are you prepared to be successful? So this is not about like moral responsibility. Are you a responsible person? But truly, like, is this going to work for the way that you function in the world? For what works best for you? Are you prepared to be successful in making those on-time payments? And if not, if it's just not the way that you work, all right, then let's not build credit, okay? It's not time yet. And then how will a new loan impact your credit profile? It may be that you don't actually need a new loan. Instead, you need to work on paying down the limits that you already have on your credit cards and getting all of your loans up to date and paying down those balances on those loans before you ever need to open a new loan. So it's just like, is it time to build more credit, or instead do I need to get my credit that I do have back on track? Okay. Let's talk about dealing with debt. So we have to decide how much we want to work on our debt while building credit, and it's going to depend on what's on your credit report and what your needs and your goals are. If we do address debt at the same time that we're talking about building new credit, the first thing we want to start with is tackle low-hanging fruit, and that would include disputing any errors and inaccuracies on your report. Because sometimes it's a matter of getting something off of your report that's not yours in the first place, right? We want to catch up on any past due accounts. If we've got past due accounts, that's always where we want to start before we open anything new anyway. So we want to get all of those bills back on time. We want to reduce balances on our revolving accounts, and every little bit helps. So we would come up with a plan to pay down those credit card balances before we would open anything new. Then we want to prioritize. We want to keep our current accounts current. We're always going to start with that priority by preventing further harm. And we want to consider the size of our debts and our interest costs. Sometimes we have accounts that are incredibly high interest. We may want to start with paying that one off before we start with paying one with a lower interest rate off to save money. Other times, we want to just pay the smallest debt off first. So we have to prioritize which we want to pay first. We need to think about navigating our competing priorities. Credit building and debt management do not always go hand in hand. If there are other debt issues at play, like I said, be cautious in pursuing new credit building opportunities. So we want to make sure we bring older accounts current instead of opening new accounts when possible. Because if you open a new good credit account, that's going to be lost if you have allowed other debts to become delinquent. It's going to harm your credit score a lot more than opening a new account is going to help. Next, while it might be satisfying to pay off and close a credit card for financial stability or to avoid fees, closing that old evolving account, even one with a delinquent history, could negatively affect your length of credit history and potentially cause your credit score to decrease. Finally, you're going to have to balance credit building while addressing collection accounts. The good work done by building new active credit may help mitigate but does not fully erase the potential harm that other negative accounts can do. If you have really old collection accounts, though, it may not be time to focus on those old collection accounts unless those particular ones are going to impact your ability to get in an apartment, for example, or to have a light bill because you owe the electric company money. You do need to pay those off. So we got to balance where we put our money when we're working on credit building. All right, so let's talk about when especially some of those negative things will fall off our credit report by the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Generally, accounts that are open and in good standing will stay on the credit report indefinitely. Once closed, accounts that have no history of missed or late payments remain on your credit report for 10 years from the date of closure. So you will see a car loan that is paid off and in good standing for 10 years from the date of closure. Closed accounts, late or missed payments stay on your report for 7 years from the date of first delinquency. The same with charge-offs or collections. So that means sometimes your charge-off accounts, your accounts that were closed in bad standing, are sold to a collections company. But that collection should only remain on your account from the date you first missed a payment on the original account, not from the date that it was sold to the collections company, if that makes sense. So it's 7 years from when the bill was due, basically, is how long it stays on your credit report. Bankruptcy. Chapter 7 stays on your account for 10 years, and Chapter 13 stays on there for 7 years from the date of entry for relief. A foreclosure stays on your account, your credit report for 7 years, and inquiries stay on your report for 2 years. So you only have 2 years worth of inquiries on your report. So, which approach to debt reduction will generally save you the most money? Is it A, paying the lowest balance off first, B, paying the highest interest rate first, C, paying the same amount on all of your debts, D, making the minimum balances on all your debts, or E, it doesn't matter? B, paying the highest interest rate first is generally the debt repayment option that will save you the most money. However, many people start with paying the smallest balance first in order to gain momentum, because it might just feel a whole lot better to get a credit card paid off than it does to get the really big bill with a high interest rate paid off first. So it depends on sort of what your goals are and what you know is going to help you stay motivated. Another approach some people take is to pay all their balances down so that their credit utilization rates are lower. With this approach, they may see a credit score increase and may become eligible for no or low interest balance transfer, which they can then shift all of those balances to something that's lower interest and save the money on interest. The takeaway is that there are many different approaches to debt reduction for active trade lines, and some methods may work better than others depending on your financial situation, your priorities, your personality, and other factors. Okay, so how do we pay off our debt? First, we're going to determine how much money, we're going to do a budget and determine how much we can afford to pay to our debts first. How much do I have in my budget every month that I can allocate towards paying down some balances or paying off some loans? Then create a chart that lists your debts and the terms of each debt. There are lots of debt reduction calculators online that work well. There is Vertex 42, which will calculate a plan for you, okay? So search that, Vertex 42 online. And then you want to plan to pay at least $5 more than the minimum balance on each account every month. Doing so will reduce the amount of interest owed and reflects more positively than just paying the minimum. Number 4, apply any surplus money that you have to high priority debts, to the ones you've committed to paying off first. And then once your first debt is paid off, you want to apply that payment that you had made on the first debt to the next debt. You're going to roll that in and so on until all the debts are paid off. All right, so let's look at an example of debt reduction via Ramona. So Ramona has $8,700 in debt on 3 credit cards, and she has been able to put aside $400 of her budget towards her debt payments every month. She's decided to use the avalanche method, so she wants to pay the highest interest rate first, which will save her about $400 total. So if we look at card 1, her starting balance here is $2,900. The interest rate is 25%, and her minimum is $35. But remember, she's doing $400 total. So her minimum on the next card is $25, and the next card is $50. And see how they're decreasing by interest. So we're doing the highest interest rate, the middle interest rate, and then the lowest. And that's the priority order. So she's putting the minimum towards these two, starting off with only paying $25 and $50. And that leaves her with $325 of the $400 total, right? So $75 between these two, and then she's got $325 left that she's going to pay every month toward this higher interest rate card. And she does that for 9 months. In the 10th month, she only has $310 left that she needs to pay. Okay, she pays that off and then puts this $325 plus the $25 towards the second card. So now she's paying $350 towards the second card. She pays $350 months 11 through 20. Month 21, she only has $148 left. And then you'll see over here where my head's blocking it, all $400 go toward this last card until she's done paying it off in month 27. So she went from $8,700 to no debt on credit cards in about 2 years and 3 months. Let's talk about collections accounts. Sometimes we don't prioritize collection accounts because they will not build credit for us. But if we're able to build credit while paying off some collections accounts, that's going to have the highest positive impact on our score. So when we choose what collections we want to pay off, remember that the new unpaid collection accounts or charge-offs have the highest negative impact on your credit score. So ones that are in the last couple of years, for example, are going to have a much higher impact than old credit account collections accounts that are like 6 years old that are about to fall off of your credit report. And that's for many reasons, but one of them is a judge can issue orders to have certain collections accounts garnished from either your taxes or your wages within the first 3 years or so. Typically, it's different for depending on what kind of debt it is. If you settle an account, if you're able to settle a collections account for less than the original amount, that is still helpful in reducing its impact on your credit report, but it's not as impactful as paying it in full. So it depends on what your priorities are, right? Especially for bills that were very high, it might be worth it to save yourself a lot of money by settling it down to a lower amount. Paying a collection account in full is more beneficial for the credit score as it will have the most impact on reducing or completely eliminating the negative impact of the account on the credit score. However, obviously paying in full requires more funds than settling. If an agreement is made with the creditor or collection agency to settle the account for less than the full balance, this will fully relieve you of your debt obligation, and it may allow you to use that money saved to apply towards another debt or other expenses. There can be tax implications of any debt that is forgiven on the amount that you settle for. Finally, you may be considering entering into a formal or informal payment plan with your debt collector. It's pretty common for people to send creditors small amounts of money to help keep creditors at bay. Unfortunately, that may not help much at all. They can charge you interest. They may not actually lessen their aggressive strategies towards you. Generally, it's best to save that money on your end and then make a single payment to pay off the collection. The only time that it could make sense to make a payment plan towards a creditor is if you are threatened with wage garnishment if you don't make that payment plan. Ultimately, be extremely cautious when you enter a payment plan with a creditor. This is especially true if you're asked to sign an agreement of any kind, because that could extend the time frame that the account is reported, or it may build in more punitive repayment terms than what originally existed. Dealing with collections can be extremely stressful, so let's remember our rights. A creditor collector cannot call you before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. They cannot contact you at work if you've already told them verbally or in writing that your employer doesn't permit it. They cannot contact any third party about you for any reason other than gathering your contact information. So they can't call your mother and ask her for anything more than what your address is. Now, does she have to give it to them? No, absolutely not. But that's the only thing they can legally ask her. Otherwise, you can report them. They cannot harass or abuse you or anyone else they contact about you. They cannot lie about the amount you owe, and they cannot use deceptive methods to collect a debt from you, like telling you that the police are going to come if you don't pay. All of these can be reported to the FTC, and collectors can be punished for doing that. As we conclude this section on debt, I want to point out some of the red flags for predatory services known as credit repair that you may have heard of, or you may have even taken part of before. So credit repair agencies are businesses that purport to help people fix their bad credit. However, these companies, oftentimes, all they do is charge you for fees for actions that you can do yourself for free. All the things we just talked about, like disputing things on your credit report. Overall, we recommend avoiding these services altogether, as there really is no such thing as a quick fix for bad credit. In particular, watch out for anyone who promises specific changes, a number of points, a specific time span, etc. Anyone who charges you upfront for your services, anyone who doesn't inform you of your rights, and anyone who asks you to lie about information that's on your report to the credit bureaus, like telling you to dispute everything on your credit report, even if you know it's yours. All right, so let's review the essentials on credit building. How do you build credit? By making on-time payments that are reported to a credit bureau every single month. That builds credit. What are the best practices? We want to keep it active. Establish and maintain a mix of active installment and revolving credit counts, and always pay on time. We want to keep it low. Make sure that on our revolving accounts, the debt balances are lower, 30%, or even better, 10%. And we want to keep it up. We want at least 6 months of credit history and activity on your credit report at any time. As we build credit, remember we want to focus on the trends upward and how improving your credit allows you to accomplish your SMART goals. For established and improved credit histories means access to affordable products and opportunities, which means increased savings and financial stability, which leads to financial security. We want to shift our thinking, our perspective, from thinking about credit as a deficit, as something that weighs us down as debt, to realizing that it's an asset. Instead of only focusing on the ways that credit has been or can be a barrier in our lives, we can think about how improving credit scores opens up new opportunities for the future for us and can help us achieve our financial goals. Credit and debt are not the same. In fact, good credit can help us avoid debt. We can also build credit responsibly without going into debt, and we can receive incentives for using credit well. If you do not have good credit now, remember that credit is never ruined forever. There is always something that can be done to improve your credit. If you have any questions about your current credit, about what's on your report, about building credit that's specific to you, you can always ask your staff member or EMP, and if they don't know the answer, they will find someone who does, or they will connect you with the services who can. So please let us know if you have any questions, if you have any feedback about this training, and we wish you the best of luck on your credit building journey.